welcome back to the Black Vault Radio. I'm John Greenewald Jr. Thanks for tuning in, making the Black Vault Radio your podcast of choice right now. If you're just joining me, I am taking your questions by popular demand. I normally wouldn't do a show like this, but started receiving a lot of letters of questions, comments, even concerns and criticisms, but I welcome them all. And many of it is, much of it, I should say, is due to the onslaught of media attention to the blackvault.com as of late, which is all due to this Yahoo News article. And before the break, I was telling you a little bit about my experience on the Adam Carolla show. If you missed that, again, you might be in for a little bit of a shock, because they do have their jokes. They do have their sound bites that come in the middle of me trying to give an answer to spark a few laughs. And they do, albeit it is funny, and it was a fun experience. Don't expect too much, but if you go to the past updates archives right there on the front page of theblackvault.com, you can listen to that. That was listened to by about 16 million people, so I couldn't pass up that publicity. A lot of you are joining me from that program. You've listened to me. And again, I got a lot of your letters. And my appearance on the Bob and Sherry show. There's been a couple other very big radio stations across the nation, big syndicated programs, the Bob and Sherry show. They're syndicated, I believe, in 30 different states, and they had me on for about 8 to 10 minutes. Now, my whole point in this, in telling you this long, boring story, is these interviews, albeit fantastic. The Bob and Sherry show was actually a lot of fun to do, and Bob, being the skeptic, is what I was told. I haven't heard them before. Don't tell him I said that. But I didn't hear their show before, and apparently they've talked about this topic rarely, but on a couple occasions, and Bob's a little bit of a skeptic. They do say on the air that I kind of piqued his interest a little bit, and that he even said himself that I was a fairly convincing person. That's a good feeling to me, because what I'm trying to do when I do these media interviews, when I talk about the UFO topic, is not really sound like a nutball. Now, maybe deep down I am, who knows, but I don't want to come off that way. What I want to do, and what I've always done, I've just passed 11 years in August, 11 years I've been doing the Black Vault. I've really wanted to keep that serious research to this, because it is a serious topic. It's a lot of fun, don't get me wrong, but it is a very serious topic. Now, you guys have written in, you've got your questions. I was limited on all those shows, but guess what? This is my radio show. I'm not going to limit myself. I'm going to take your questions. Tons of them came in, and spent a lot of time trying to organize these things. I appreciate everybody who has taken part into submitting their questions and wanting to know more. I've tried to organize them in somewhat of a good order, so this whole show will actually make sense to you and not be across the board. So I do appreciate all of you sending in your emails. Now, if this is your first time joining me here on the Black Vault Radio, welcome. If it's your first time on the Black Vault, and or maybe you've visited a couple times, you don't know what the heck it's about, let me just give you the nutshell version, then I'll dive into many of your questions. The blackvault.com was started by myself now over 11 years ago. I was 15 at the time. Do the math, and I'm getting up there in age. Yes, I'm getting old, but I wanted, at that time, I wanted to really just pursue a curiosity. I had not had a sighting. I had not had an encounter, an experience, nothing like that. I had a curiosity. And that's really deep down what it was. So I started looking online and I started researching UFOs and seeing what was out there. And you really do get those stories that are told all the time, the same Roswell incident stories. Now, there's a lot to that case, and I'm the first one to say it. But I just got tired of reading it, and I came across this website with a 4-page document on it, and that really piqued my interest because it was a U.S. government document, it was declassified, and it was obtained under what's called the Freedom of Information Act. So I fired off that request because this website explains to you how to do it. They just say, print out this letter, put your name on it, and sure enough, you'll get the document. Now, I didn't believe that. And even if the document was true, why was the government going to send a 15-year-old kid a letter, let alone a document, part of their archive? And sure enough, they did. And that really was the start of what you're looking at if you're on the blackvault.com. That was the start of that website because I went back on the internet, tried to search for more, very few documents to be found, but I knew that if I was looking for it and I had a curiosity that others did too, and they would want to see this document. So I started researching. I started firing off these Freedom of Information Act requests, trying to figure out the deep archives of the United States government and military, not only on UFOs, but later I would start tackling all sorts of different topics. And the result is what you're looking at. And here I am 11 years later. My curiosity has not died. I still haven't had a UFO sighting or unexplained experience that really drives me to push on, push on. It's the curiosity that makes me push on, push on. And that leads me to my first question submitted by you. This is from Barbara W. in Santa Barbara, California. And she says, what got you started requesting FOIA documents at the age of 15? Well, I think I've halfway answered your question, Barbara. Thanks for submitting it. But I also want to add that I think that when I was 15, what got me started was not only that curiosity, but that desire to learn. And I know that that sounds silly and cheesy, and I don't even think that I knew that at the time, but I think it was some kind of thirst for knowledge that you don't hear about in your history class. When I was in high school, when I first started these requests, I was still in high school, obviously, and I was always taken back, like, for example, history class. I'm a big World War II buff. You deal, when you sit through a history class like that and you get to World War II and you deal with all the information that's behind that huge era in history, you can spend years on that topic alone. They just breeze by it in like 2 days, and I had done personal research. So when I was a junior and senior in high school and we would get to topics like that, it would always irk me because there was so much more that they could teach. There's so much more to learn about. And it's not that, overarching story that really kind of is told time and time again in the classroom. There's so much more to discover. And a lot of what I researched was through the Freedom of Information Act. If you go to theblackvault.com, click on the documents, and you'll see a World War II section. There's fascinating history in there. And that's true across the board. If you have an interest, if you have something that really does fascinate you, but you don't know where to start, use the Freedom of Information Act. It actually works. Now, Billy from Phoenix, Arizona, he writes in, can you explain how the Freedom of Information Act works? Well, Billy, I'm glad you asked. The Freedom of Information Act is a law that's been around for a few decades. And in brief, what it says is that any person, no matter where your locale is, you can be right here in the great United States of America, you could be in the UK, you could be in China, you can be in Afghanistan if you want, and file a Freedom of Information Act request. You file it to any agency, any federal agency, or military installation, almost all, and we'll see if I can get into that a little bit later, but pretty much every military and government installation in the federal government will accept a Freedom of Information Act request. What does that mean? Well, if you have that interest that I just talked about a couple of minutes ago, no matter what it might be, if you think the military or government has something, then I urge you, start your quest, and theblackvault.com can help you. I've got a section on really giving I'm the very first to admit the long, boring details about what the Freedom of Information Act is. But I'm trying to stress that the act is a fairly simple technique to use. And I say technique because you got to learn a little bit about the style of your letter and how you ask for information. It's very easy. I've got a template online that you can actually copy and paste. And what it really says is, hey, this is a Freedom of Information Act request. It cites the law, which I think is more of a formality than anything. They know what the Freedom of Information Act is. And there's really a line where you fill in what you're looking for. For example, if you wanted UFO information, you can actually ask for all UFO information, let's say to the CIA or the NSA or the FBI. All of those agencies will accept your request, and they'll pretty much send you a bill. Not to spoil the ending for you, but the NSA, there's about 600 pages or so. I think when it's all said and done, there's about 600 pages. The DIA, Defense Intelligence Agency, there's about 900. The CIA, there's over 2,000. Well, the Freedom of Information Act says that you can have up to 100 pages